king. In the course of time, Amnon, son of David, fell in love with Tamar, the beautiful sister of Absalom, son of David. Amnon became frustrated to the point of illness on account of her sister Tamar, for she was a virgin, and it seems impossible for him to do anything to her. Now Ammon had a friend named Jonadab, son of Shemab, David's brother. Jonadab was a very shrewd man. He asked Ammon, "Why do the king's son look so haggard morning after morning? Won't you tell me?" Ammon said to him, "I am in love with Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister. Go to bed and pretend to be ill." Jonadab said, "When your brother comes to see you, say to him, 'I would like my sister Tamar to come and give me something to eat. Let her prepare the food in the sight so I may watch her and then eat it from her hand.'" So Ammon lay down and pretended to be ill. When the king came to see him, Ammon said to him, "I would like my sister Tamar to come and make me special bread in my sight, so I may eat from her hand." David sent word to Tamar at the palace, "Go to the house of your brother Ammon and prepare some food for him." So Tamar went to the house of her brother Ammon, and who was lying down. She took some dough, kneaded it, and made the bread in his sight and baked it. Then she took the pan and served him the bread, but he refused to eat. "Send everyone out of here," Ammon said. So everyone left him. Then Ammon said to Tamar, "Bring the food here into my bedroom, so I may eat from your hand." And Tamar took the bread she had prepared and brought it to her brother Ammon in his bedroom. But when she took it to him to eat, he grabbed her hand and said, "Come to bed with me, my sister." "Don't, my brother," she said to him. "Don't force me. Such things should not be done in Israel. Don't do this wicked thing." "What about me? Where could I get rid of my disgrace? And what about you? You would be like one of the wicked fools in Israel. Please speak to the king. He will not keep me from being married to you." But he refused to listen to her, and since he was stronger than she raped her. Then Ammon hated her and intense hatred. In fact, he hated her more than he had loved her. Ammon said to her, "Get up and get out." "No," she said to him, "sending me away would be a greater wrong than what you have already done to me." But he refused to listen to her. He called his personal servant and said, "Get this woman out of here and bolt the door after her." So his servant put her out and bolted the door after her. She was wearing a richly ornamented robe, for this was the kind of garment the virgin daughter of the king wore. Tamar put ashes on her head and tore the ornamented robe she was wearing. She put her hand on her head and went away, weeping aloud as she went. Her brother Absalom said to her, "Has that Ammon your brother been with you? Be quiet now, my sister. He is your brother. Don't take this thing to heart." And Tamar lived in her brother Absalom's house, a desolate woman. When King David heard all this, he was furious. Absalom never said a word to Ammon, either good or bad. He hated Ammon because he had disgraced his sister Tamar. 2 years later, the Absalom's shepherds were at Baalhazor near the border of Ephraim. He invited all the king's sons to come there. Absalom went to the king and said, "Your servant has had shares to come. Will the king and his officers please join me?" "No, my son," the king replied, "all of us should not go. We would only be a burden to you." Although Absalom urged him, he still refused to go, but gave him his blessing. Then Absalom said, "If not, please let my brother Ammon come with us." The king asked him, "Why should he go with you?" And Absalom urged him, so he sent with him Ammon and the rest of the king's sons. Absalom ordered his men, "Listen, when Ammon is in the high spirit from drinking wine, and I say to you, 'Strike Ammon down and kill him,' don't be afraid. Have not I given you this order? Be strong and brave." So Absalom's men did to Ammon what Absalom had ordered. Then all the king's sons got up, mounted their mules, and fled. While they were on their way, the report came from David. Absalom had struck down all the king's sons, and not one of them is left. The king stood up, tore his clothes, and lay down on the ground, and all his servants stood by with their clothes torn. But Jonadab, son of Shimon, David's brother, said, My lord should not think that they killed all the princes, only that they killed Ammon said. This had been Absalom's expressed intention ever since the day Ammon raped his sister Tamar. My lord the king should not be concerned about the report that all the king's sons are dead, only Ammon is dead. Meanwhile, Absalom had bled. Not a man standing watched to look at him, and saw many people on the road west of him, coming down on the side of the hill. The watchman went and told the king, I see men in the direction of the horsemen on the side of the hill. Jonadab said to the king, See, the king's sons are here. It has happened just as your servant said. As he finished speaking, the king's son came in, wailing loudly. The king, too, and all his servants wept very bitterly. Absalom fled and went to Talmai, son of Ammihud, the king of Geshur. But the king David mourned for him, so every day. After Absalom fled and went to Geshur, he stayed there 3 years. On the spirit of the king longed to go to Absalom, for he was consoled concerning Absalom's death. 14. Joab, son of Jeremiah, knew that the king's heart longed to Absalom. So Joab went to someone to Tekoa and had a wise woman brought from there. He said to her, Pretend you're in mourning, dress in mourning clothes, and don't use any cosmetic lotions. Act like a woman who has spent many days grieving toward all the Israelites who came to the king asking for justice. And so he stole the hearts of the men of Israel. At the end of 4 years, Absalom said to the king, Let me go to Hebron and fulfill a vow I made to the Lord. While your servant was living in Geshur in Aram, I made this vow. If the Lord takes me back to Jerusalem, I will worship the Lord in Hebron. The king said to him, Go in peace. So he went to Hebron. And Absalom sent secret messengers throughout the tribe of Israel to say, As soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, they say, Absalom is king in Hebron. 200 men from Jerusalem had accompanied Absalom. They had been invited as guests and went quite innocently, knowing nothing about the matter while Absalom was offering sacrifices. He also sent Ahithophel and Gilnot, David's counselor, to come from Gilo, his hometown. And so the conspiracy gained strength, and Absalom's following kept on increasing. A messenger came and told David, The heart of the men of Israel are with Absalom. Then David said to all his officials who were with him in Jerusalem, Come, we must flee, or none of us will escape from Absalom. We must leave immediately, or he will move quickly to overtake us and bring ruin upon us and put the city to the sword. The king's officers answered him, Your servants are ready to do whatever our lord the king chooses. The king set out with his entire household following him, but he left 10 concubines to take care of the palace. So the king set out with all the people following him, and they halted at the place some distance away. All his men marched past him, along with all the Canaanites and Pelethians, and all the 600 Gittites who had accompanied him from Gath marched before the king. The king said to Italy and Gitti, Why should you come along with us? Go back and stay with King Absalom. You are a foreigner and exile from your homeland. You came only yesterday, and today shall I make you wonder about with us, when I do not know where I am going. Go back and take your countrymen away. May kindness and faithfulness be with you. But Ittai replied to the king, As surely as the Lord lives, and as my lord the king lives, wherever my lord the king may be, whether it means life or death, there will your servants be. David said to Ittai, Go ahead, march on. So Ittai and Gitti marched on with all his men and families that were with him. The whole countryside wept aloud as all the people passed by. The king also crossed the Kidron Valley, and all the people moved on toward the desert. Zadok was there too, and all the Levites who were with him were carrying the ark of the covenant of the God. They sat down to the ark of God, and Abiathar offered sacrifices until the people had finished leaving the city. Then the king said to Zadok, "Take the ark of God back into the city. If I find favor in the Lord's eyes, he will bring me back and let me see his dwelling place again. But if he says, I am not pleased with you, then I am ready. Let him do to me whatever seems good to him." The king also said to Zadok the priest, "Aren't you seer? Go back to the city in peace with your son Azar's and Jonathan son of Abiathar. You and Abiathar take your 2 sons with you. I will wait at the border of the desert until words come from you to inform me." So Zadok and Abiathar took the ark of God back to Jerusalem and stayed there. But David continued up the mountain of Olives, weeping as he went. His head was covered with his bare foot. All the people with him covered their heads too and were weeping as they went up. Now David had been told, "Ahithophel is among the conspiracy with Absalom." So David prayed, "O Lord, turn Absalom's counsel in boldness." When David arrived at Summit, when people used to worship God, who is the arcade and was there to meet him, his robe torn and dust on his head. David said to him, "If you go with me, you will be a burden to me. But if you return to the city and say to Absalom, I will be your servant. O king, I was your father's servant in the past, but now I will be your servant. Then you can help me be prostrate in Abiathar's advice. Won't the priest Zadok and Abiathar be there with you? Tell them anything you hear in the king's palace. Their 2 sons, Asa son of Zadok and Jonathan son of Abiathar, are there with them. Send them to me with anything you hear." So David's friend Hushai arrived at Jerusalem as Absalom was entering the city. 16. When David had gone a short distance beyond the summit, there was Ziba, the steward Milstress, waiting to meet him. He had a string of donkeys saddled and loaded with 200 loaves of bread, 100 cakes of raisins, 100 cakes of figs, and a skin of wine. The king asked Ziba, "Why have you brought this?" Ziba answered, "The donkeys are for the king's household to ride on. The bread and fruit are for the men to eat, and the wine is refreshed those who became exhausted in the desert." The king then asked, "Where is your master's grandson?" Ziba said to him, "He is staying in Jerusalem because he thinks, today is the house of Israel will give me back my grandfather's kingdom." Then the king said to Ziba, "All that belongs to Mephibosheth is now yours." "I humbly bow," Ziba said. "May I find favor in your eyes, my lord king." As King David approached Bethlehem, a man from the same clan as Saul's family came out from there. His name was Shema son of Gera, and he cursed as he came out. He flooded David and all the king's officials with the stone. All the troops and the special guard were on David's right and left, and he cursed. Shema said, get out, you man of blood, you scoundrel. The Lord had repaid you for all the blood you shed in the house of Saul, in whose place you have reigned. The Lord has handed the king over to your son Absalom. You have come to ruin because you are a man of blood." Then Absalom son of Jeruel said to the king, "Why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over and cut off his head." But the king said, "What do you and I have in common, your son of Jeruel? If he is cursing because the Lord said to him, curse David, who can say, Why do you do this?" David then said to Abishai and all his officials, "My son, who is of my own flesh, is trying to take my life. How much more then these Benjamites. Leave him alone, and let him curse, for the Lord has told him to. It may be that the Lord will see the distress and repay me with good for the cursing I am receiving today. So David and his men continued along the road while Samuel was going along the hillside opposed him, cursing as he went and throwing stones at him and showering him with dirt. The king and all the people with him arrived at the distance exhausted, and there he refreshed himself. Meanwhile, Absalom and all the men in Israel came to Jerusalem, and Ahithophel was with him. Then Hashra the Archite, David's friend, went to Absalom and said to him, "Long live the king, long live the king." Absalom asked Hushai, "Is this the love you show your friend? Why didn't you go with your friend?" Hushai said to Absalom, "Know the one chosen by the Lord, by these people, and by all the men of Israel. He is I will be, and I will remain with him. Furthermore, whom should I serve? Should I not serve the king, serve the son? Just as I served your father, so I will serve you." Absalom said to Abner, "Give us your advice. What should we do?" Abner answered, "Lie with your father's concubines, who he left to take care of the palace. Then all the Israel will hear that you made yourself a stench in your father's nostrils, and the hands of everyone with you will be strengthened." So they pitched a tent of Absalom on the roof, and he lay with his father's concubine in the sight of all Israel. Now in those days the advice Abner gave was like that on the one who inquired of God. That was how both David and Absalom regarded all the Abner's advice.